Welcome to the March 11th Astro Cafe and first one since the time change. Why don't we kick it off with, well, Dave Payne was the first one to actually mention that he had stuff to share and he has some images, so it'd be great to see those. And you're muted, Dave, just to...
Yeah, I thought I was going to go last, but I'm ready now. So
Okay, we could put you till last, but
that's okay.
I'm just going in order of who showed up first. First come, first serve. Wow.
And then I can go over there.
So this was my final shots at some Orion stuff. It's now setting is when it's getting dark, so it's not much longer for this season. And we'll be into
The square books.
galaxy season.
And then one.
But what we have here on the left in this bright magenta color, which I'll get to in a second, is Bernard's loop, which kind of encircles all of the molecular cloud that's in Orion. And these reflection and dark nebula off the right are M33, I want to say. M78. So I kind of like the reflection stuff, but I wanted to capture this emission nebula over here, which you see in red, reflections in blue, and this dark stuff that the reflections are hiding behind. Now, I was reading when you put the red is generated by a hydrogen alpha signal. And I was reading that hydrogen beta, which is actually a blue color, is generally about 20% of hydrogen alpha. So what I did is I complemented the red that this hydrogen alpha filter was giving me in Bernard's loop, and I complemented it with 20% hydrogen beta, which I didn't actually have. I just took 20% of the hydrogen alpha to represent the hydrogen beta. And I blended the blue in with the red, and not surprisingly, you get a magenta overtone to it, which I thought was quite interesting, because when I had been looking at it at the center of the universe, there's a display there about the spectra of the gases, and the spectra of the light emitted by neon type lights with various gases on it. And if you next time you're up at the center, go to that display and turn on the hydrogen light, and you'll see that it's giving you a clear, very distinct magenta color as it gives off. So I thought this image was interesting from that standpoint.
It's also interesting, the M78 is often image just isolated, but it's nice to see where it is relative to Barnard's loop.
Yeah, I thought so too. It's actually not very far away, as you can see.
And now I see a whole bunch of things that look like Barnard's loop in a different galaxy.
Exactly. So this is M33 triangulum. I was trying to duplicate some images that I think Gary showed. I'm not sure who took them, but it was using Gary's telescope. I was using a smaller scope here,
Yep,
but
right.
this galaxy is together with Andromeda, and it's actually not very far from Andromeda at all, but it's very close to Andromeda. Think within a million light years. It's kind of interesting for a couple of reasons. One, like Andromeda Galaxy, we can actually, if I zoom in here, you can actually see the stars in a different galaxy. So if I zoom in, you can see these tiny blue and yellow specks here. And these are actually stars, or sometimes the larger ones are probably star clusters. And if they are single stars, they're probably very giant stars, but they are not Milky Way stars that we're looking at. And this galaxy is a much more active, and much more star formation is taking place in this galaxy than the very quiet Andromeda and our modestly somewhat more active Milky Way. But there's lots of gigantic molecular clouds emitting that red in loops, just like we saw in the previous image, except this is in another galaxy. So it's very interesting seeing the structure of this galaxy.
Dave, I have a question for you.
Sure.
When I was processing this galaxy and just looking at the HA image, I was quite surprised at how much interstellar gas there appeared to be in that color, in the HA color. Did you get the same thing, or was I seeing something different?
Well, I was getting a purple hue, but it was kind of dependent on how much hydrogen alpha I did add. But it is very, like, there is quite a halo around the galaxy. And these are mainly stars that are just too small to resolve into individual stars, I believe.
There's that many hydrogen alpha, there's that many stars that give off enough hydrogen alpha to see that then, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
Like, it's in the process of getting eaten by Andromeda. It's in the very early stages of getting eaten by Andromeda is what I'm reading. So
Beautiful image.
Yep.
thank you. And then, believe it or not, I did get an image in February.
Dave,
Yes, sir.
do you know if they have any measurement of the size of Barnard's ring versus the things we're seeing in the triangulum? Are they comparable?
I'd have to get back on you on that, but I bet we can actually just take its angular size and by the distance of the two objects, and I'll get back to you when I do that calculation.
That's remarkable if they're the same sort of thing. We're actually seeing in our neighborhood something that you can see that far away. I love that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But as for stars in further galaxy, I think we're out of luck. I think that's about as far as you can get. There was actually an interesting Star Trek episode when they got flung back into that triangulum galaxy.
Mhm.
And this is another area. This is in Monoceros or however you say it, next to Orion. And it's one that I did a year and a bit ago. I did it in monocamera and HOS, but I went in narrowband filters in a monocamera. I went to a color camera this time with a tri-band filter, if you will, and went and got the image again. And what I was trying to prove to myself was that with a color camera, you can take pretty much as good quality images as you can with a mono camera. You just have to take a lot of images to get there. But I was very happy with the way this turned out. This is the same as this red, and this is the same as the magenta in the other image, except I'm not adding the blue this time. And again, we have a reflection nebula here that is showing blue, but all this hydrogen emissions are showing in red. And it has an interesting texture to it. It's almost like a fur here, and this is the fox fur nebula. And back here, there's some more of this. It's almost like a furry texture to the nebulosity that I'm not sure I've seen in other places. And that's all I had.
Very nice.
Dave, before you go, could you let us know what your exposure lengths are in those images?
Yeah, if you go to the Zenfolio site, I could tell you this one. For example, so this was with a one-shot color camera. But if you go to the Zenfolio site, it's listed by each image is on there. So this took 73 450-second images. So that's divided by 60. That's 7.5 minutes. And there's 73 of them that went into this image.
So how did you choose 7.5 minutes as an exposure time, Dave?
How did I do that?
Yeah.
Oh, by ratios, looking at the bandwidth of the filter. And just doing my ratios, which is also dependent on the gain I use. So, you know, I like to end up less than 15 minutes and more than a couple of minutes. So this is the ones that I ended up taking out. There's always a trade-off between less exposures of longer length and shorter exposures, but more of them.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Very nice.
Wonderful.
So Randy, you mentioned that you had a couple items to speak about.
I do. And the first one, I'm hoping that we can have some memories of our friend Barbara Lane. I wrote Kurt, and he's thankful, but he didn't want to join us. He says he'll come and watch it on the YouTube later on. This is the spectacular photo from her obituary that was just published. So Barbara was the secretary when I joined the RASC, about 5 years ago, but she was involved quite a bit longer. And there's not a lot of pictures in the Zenfolio. This is one of the only ones that has her name on it, but I looked around for some other ones. So behind there, we see David Lee and Joe Carr and Kurt, her wonderful husband. And the two of them were just such a team, and they were always together. And it was really good seeing them like that. But yeah, I went through, and she was the host of this Astro Cafe. I hope somebody can tell me how long and This was when it was always live, of course.
If you have a look at the counts, she started that. So the spreadsheet, I think, how
Oh.
many attendees,
Okay.
and it's certainly pre-pandemic anyways.
So,
Diane's in that photo.
Diane is, I took this picture because our other dear departed Diane is there. You'll recognize most of the people. This was a picture, when 2018, around Christmas time. Anyway, where is she? She's in this picture. Oh yeah, right in the middle. Very back, right in the middle. Anyway, definitely part of our community, and then I got, this was in COVID, but I went around to everybody's place to hand their certificates of appreciation, and this is inside their apartment with that beautiful sculpture. We took off our masks just for the photo. The rest of the time we were very masked up. I hope some people have some stories that they can offer.
So that's you
That's me
on the right hand side.
on
yes.
the right.
And how many years ago was
That was in 2022.
Okay.
Yeah, and she was already, well, I think she's been diagnosed with cancer for, I think, well over a decade. And so they were just so happy. Every year was a present for them.
Is it breast cancer?
I don't know. I just know it was cancer. But that's why she withdrew from council. But yeah, she did very well, and again, I certainly appreciated having her here. Lauri.
I agree with you that that Barb and Kurt were a team, and you hardly ever saw them without each other, which was just great. And you know, you got 2 for 1 basically, but they were both members, and they just did such a lovely job, and she was just so kind and always willing to help. I mean, no matter what you asked, they'd be there, and she'd be there with a smile. And it was she was a really very lovely person to know. I was really happy to know her.
Jill.
I didn't really know her, but she preceded me as secretary, and she was just lovely and gracious and helpful and supportive, because I felt like I'd kind of taken on something that I probably couldn't handle, and she was just lovely to me.
Marjie?
Barb and Kurt live in the Cook Street Village area. So I saw them numerous times on the street. And I saw Barb, and Kurt was pushing her wheelchair. I saw her just the week before last.
Oh.
And always smiling. Yeah. And extremely funny, just exceptionally funny. She could say something kind of sideways, and if you didn't catch it, it was great loss, because she was exceptionally funny. And one Christmas, I think it was before COVID, I didn't have any plans for Christmas. So she said, come to our place. And so I did. And they are vegetarian, and they served me just a fabulous vegetarian food. And then we looked at, we talked about trips. And they had been to some of the same places I had been. They had been to the Arctic, actually, I think it was just the trip after I was to the Arctic. But as always with Arctic type trips, you don't necessarily stop at the same places. And so we spent some time looking at their slides from the Arctic and saying, oh yeah, I remember that. And oh, did you go there? And yeah, it was just being in the presence of the two of them. It was just always delightful.
They had borrowed a club 8-inch Dobsonian. They live in apartments, so they couldn't use it from their home, but they would pack it into their car and go out observing, which, you know, it's the thing to do, but it's not easy. Well, we say goodbye. It's very hard, but this is part of the caring community that we are, and I really appreciate that we do have lots of stories for our members. So, oh, I stopped that share. I didn't need to stop the share because I have another thing. Let's go back up. So, I could say that today is the first day of Ramadan, but actually it depends where you live. And so I prepared a little something about this. I talked about this a couple of years ago. I had a more extensive presentation, but this time I just want to talk a bit about what I learned this weekend about it. So 1445 years, I believe, since Muhammad went to heaven.
Not sure.
I don't know the details of that.
We got Ken's jumped back on top. We need to take it back.
Oops.
It's my fault.
Okay, we just have to fix up over here in the room. Okay, so there's a very good website. I think it's just called Moon Sighting, but the rule is a Muslim month starts with the first sight of the crescent moon. It is not at the new moon, it's the first sight of the crescent moon, and the Jewish calendar is the same thing. But there's a huge debate in the Islamic community of whether you can use a calculation or whether you have to actually see the moon. And what are the criteria that allow you to see the moon? Well, the first is you have to look in a place where you can actually see the horizon to the west. Second, it can't be cloudy. And then, getting a little more detailed, the elongation, how far the moon is from the sun, it's hard to say, but with the naked eye, they say it's usually something like 8 to 9 degrees is the minimum that you can see it from the sun. But also, it depends on what angle the sun and the moon are setting. Where is the ecliptic? And so if it's very shallow, like in the winter, then the moon is not out of the shadow of the earth, that the shadow that the earth makes of the sunlight as well. And so they figure you have to have the moon 5 degrees above the horizon when the sun sets. So elongation 8 degrees, how far it is from the sun, and then the perpendicular to the horizon, the altitude has to be 5 degrees. And that yellow line there was where on Sunday, they figure was the earliest you could possibly see it, which would mean that North America could have started on Sunday. But in fact, it started today. If we keep going around, so what this is a map that shows, like in red, they figure it's visible with optical aid only. And C, you use the telescope, you can find the moon, but then you take away the telescope and then you look, and that's considered okay by the rules of the Islamic rules for doing the naked eye sighting. You're allowed to first see exactly where it is with a telescope and then move over. And then the blue part there, that's where you should be able to see the moon. But once you get to the A, then so this is for today. Everybody should be able, given a clear sky to the west, should be able to see the crescent moon. And I have to say, I have tried, I have never seen a crescent moon under 24 hours old. It's on my list. It's one of those things that I keep hoping. Anyway, it just hasn't happened in my life yet. It would have to happen when the new moon is kind of in the evening the day before, so that you have more of a fighting chance to see the crescent moon within 24 hours later. So there's only a couple of times a year that it's even possible to see a moon that's under 24 hours. Anyway, the trick is, every country has their own Islamic council, and they all go by different rules. So you can see, this is not the whole table. It goes on larger than the screen, but this is what I could fit on the screen. A lot of countries, not necessarily close to Saudi Arabia, just follow the astronomers of Saudi Arabia, where Mecca lives. So you see places like Japan and Switzerland and Taiwan. There are places all over the world that will use the Saudi Arabia. Many countries will use Turkey. Why? I don't know. It's interesting they say US and Canada, that number 16 in that second column, because that's not what I've read. I've read that there is, okay, Hillel, Toronto Hillel Committee, countries that follow their own criteria. What the Hillel Committee does, Hillel just means moon sighting, the new crescent moon. And they ask people to fill in this email form to say that they've seen the moon. And they have a bunch of criteria. You have to be a practicing Muslim of good standing, upright or whatever. There's a couple of other criteria. And then you can say, I saw the moon at such and such a time. And if they get a couple of sightings, it's okay. They don't make it as important in most months, but it's really important this month, because after you've seen the moon, then when it's daylight, you have to fast. So you don't know whether your fast is going to start today or tomorrow. Oh, another thing that's really important is the moon, the lunation is never more than 30 days. So if you don't see the moon on the 29th night after the last new moon, then you can just assume it's the 30th. So it's not like if it's overcast for many days, you're hooped. But the beginning of Ramadan and the end of Ramadan are determined by this sighting. So here's just a couple of quotes I found in the internet today. So from Canada, I saw this. This was from Ottawa. Based on the global moon sighting requirements, the Council of Imams of Ottawa-Gatineau has validated the actual moon sighting information on the evening of Sunday, March 10th. Therefore, the council hereby declares the first of Ramadan will be on Monday, March 11th. So today is the first day of Ramadan. There you go. And then in Australia, the very interesting website, and this was the quote there, I'm going to read it out. The method by which the Grand Mufti of Australia and the Australian Fatwa Council had determined the commencement of the month of Ramadan is based on the calculated birth of the moon before sunset, the duration of the moon set after sunset, and the possibility of sighting the moon. So they go by calculation. This is a method that many prominent and reputable global scholars, councils, and Muslim countries have adopted. So they're very defensive. The Australian National Imams Council and the Australian Fatwa Council acknowledge, understand, and respect the imams and scholars who may hold a different opinion and request all Muslims to respect the different opinions on this matter and work towards the unity of the Muslim community in preserving the common values and interests that they all have and share. I love that. I think that's really very good. But it's interesting that it is a minority situation. Most countries will not go by calculation. Then there's all sorts of crazy rules when you live way up north or south, because the religion was developed at, in quite reasonable latitudes. And so people who live in northern Norway and Canada have a whole bunch of rules, but basically they'll, like, I know in Whitehorse they use Vancouver time in the summer when the month happens in the summer, because otherwise you would never be able to finish your fast. But that's a whole other story, which I leave for another time. There.
Indonesia.
I will look what Indonesia does, so. People here are getting coffee, by the way, because Kathy made it for us.
And cookies.
Sorry.
Which Randy paid for.
Thanks, Randy. Do we wait for you to look up Indonesia, or do you want to take a minute and come back to us?
Oh, you gotta wait, because I'm having technical difficulties.
Okay. Let's see here. I think we had Dennis wanted to speak about something, I believe.
Indonesia official announcement, all it says. I don't know what that means.
Yeah, thanks, Brock. So I just wanted to put in a little plug here for I've got a friend who's acting in a play, a local production that's coming out here this week, and it's kind of interesting. So and I think Randy will like the title of this one, but it's not specifically astronomy related, but it is space related. And the play is called They Promised Her the Moon. And so what this is, it's quite an interesting story that before hearing about this, I never knew before, but back in the 60s, during the Mercury program days, they actually had a kind of a side program where they were testing women as well as the men for the initial Mercury program. So this is a story that's basically wrapped around one person, Jerry Cobb, who was a woman who was tested, and it's quite an interesting story. I'll just the one thing that kind of really stands out in this whole story, I don't know the whole thing, but apparently when they were testing her in isolation chamber, she actually was in there for 9 hours, which was more than twice of any of the men in that space program. So quite an interesting story. Anyway, I just thought I'd put in a little plug like this in case anybody might be interested in going to see this play, and I'll put in the link for this website in the chat.
Looks interesting. Thanks, Dennis.
Yeah.
You know what happened to these fine almost astronauts?
I don't know the whole story. I haven't seen the play yet. I've only heard little bits of it, but apparently it kind of in this kind of in the story that they basically just shut down the program where they're testing the women. The Navy decided that they were not going to provide the facility, the testing facility, any longer for this. So it basically just got canceled, got scrapped. And that's about all I know about it so far.
Yeah, I know a little bit about it. There's been in recent years, there's been 3 or 4 books produced about these women. And they got some recognition at the time. They were tested, and they were on the cover of Look magazine or things like that. But the whole thing was basically dropped. This all took place in the early '60s, and they all went off and pursued various careers. I think Jerry Cobb was quite an outstanding pilot, and did a lot of flying down to South America. And I think she also became a missionary, if my memory serves me right.
I think you're right there, Chris. Yeah.
Now, one of these women, her name was Wally Funk, and she's still around. And she was a passenger when Jeff Bezos started launching people on his New Shepard rockets. We all know about William Shatner going on a flight. The flight before that, which was the first one with humans on board, Wally Funk was on that. So she actually got into space, and albeit briefly, and of course, when people started writing about them, they got a lot of publicity, and there were some reunions, I think, at appropriate events, like when Eileen Collins became the first woman to command the space shuttle. And by the way, that flight was one where they launched the Chandra X-ray telescope. That's a good 20 years ago now, that they had a reunion of these women at the Cape for the launch. So anyway, it's an interesting story, not entirely a happy one, but I've just mentioned a couple of the silver linings there.
So it was the Navy that was training them rather than NASA?
Well, it was
It was NASA, but it was Navy facility. So all the training facility, the isolation tank, and a lot of the other equipment, it was a Navy facility, apparently. And they decided that they weren't going to offer it for the program for women any longer. For whoever made that decision, I don't know, but that's kind of what I know of the history.
Yeah, I'm just trying to remember that, because it was there were some aviation medicine people who were doing this, and I'm actually not sure whether it was the Navy or not, or the Air Force, but I think it was sort of the physicians who were interested in this, not so much the branch of the armed forces, and I think they might have got some private funding, but anyway. And yeah, so NASA wasn't particularly on the hook for this, but there was some discussion. There were congressional hearings at the time, because one of the women, I know her last name was Hart. Her husband was a senator, so they had a little bit of clout and had some hearings, but they didn't get very far, because the early '60s, it was a different time. That's the kindest thing I can say.
And one of the other characters in the play is Jackie Cochran, who was, some of you might know, as quite a famous female aviator from early on.
Yes, and when I mentioned funding, I was actually thinking of her because she was very successful in business, and her husband was extremely rich too. But you know, I think she could have done quite well for herself even without her husband, I think. And she was involved. It's actually a fascinating story because she wasn't entirely on board with seeing these women get ahead, you know, a little bit of professional jealousy, I guess. But Jackie Cochran, for example, I think she was the first woman to break the sound barrier and things like that.
Cool. Well, thanks, Dennis. And well, Chris is actually already sort of warmed up. Why don't you speak to what you were wanting to speak about?
Okay, yes, I've got a couple of, just a minute. So this will take us back to our topic of last week, but this is a new stamp coming out from the post office in honor of the eclipse, and it's coming out on Thursday. So you can go to your neighborhood post office and get some eclipse stamps. We have occasionally had astronomy stamps, but this is the first eclipse stamp that I can think of from Canada anyway. And these will come in booklets of 10. And I forget what the first class rate is these days, but it's getting close to $1. So anyway,
Get 10 at once.
yes,
Yeah, cheaper if you buy them as 10.
that's right. Yeah. Well, I'm not even sure if they would give you one as a single, but if they did, they would make you pay extra for the privilege.
Yeah.
You know, if I ever became dictator of the country, that would be one of the first things I would do was frog march in the head of the post office about that one, but that's another matter.
Good luck.
And I came across this. It looks like there's a comet hanging around. I don't know. Somebody might know something more about this, but there's been a bit of hype around this comet. And this you see this shot here. You can see Andromeda, and this is just taken not even a week ago.
I can speak a bit to it, Chris.
Beg your pardon?
I can speak a bit to it.
Okay.
It was the 12th periodic comet that was ever discovered. That's why it's called 12P. And Pons was a French comet hunter and early 18th century. And then 71 years later, Brooks saw it and saw that it was and figured out that it was the same comet, and it's only been back something like 5 times. But interestingly, as it has been coming in over the last 2 or 3 years, twice it jumped up in magnitude 2 or 3 magnitudes, like an impulse. You can see the light curve, and it it's slowly moving up, and then poof, it jumps from 15th to 12th magnitude or something like that. And the hope is that because obviously it's falling apart. Oh, look at that, you've got it all. Cool. Anyway, does this article have the light curve? Anyway, it's pieces are falling off, and it then is more reflective, and that could happen all the more as it goes around the sun. It's going to be, it's not close to the sun, it's even further out than Venus.
But I think it's said its closest point to the sun is like what, April 21st?
Yeah, it'll be
Yeah.
there, but it will only be at, unless you have an outburst, it will be down at 5th or 6th magnitude. So it won't be visible. Especially since, you know, there's something really bright next to it, even during the eclipse. Unless it has this outburst, then there's the hope that it could get up to Jupiter sort of brightness.
That's the tantalizing part for those of us who are eclipse observers, is that it may be bright enough to spot during totality.
And if I recall, it will be just angularly, it will be inside of Jupiter, if I recall.
Yeah, if you look at the diagram I showed last week, you'll see that the planets and this comet are all in a line during totality. Should be interesting.
Nice.
Okay, and yes, and I was also very sorry to hear about Barbara Lane, and I don't think I knew her as well as some others did, because that was kind of the time when I was up to my eyeballs with national stuff, but you know, if there's anything I can do, seeing as I'm the president, let me know, and I'm going to try and make it to her service in April. So that's all I've got to say.
Okay, thanks, Chris.
Okay.
And I believe Darren also wanted to speak briefly about Discord.
Yeah, thanks, Brock. So yeah, I created a Discord server. In another term, it's basically like a chat room. So it's just like a private chat room that you can go to. So a lot of us, we don't want to share our cell phone numbers and get text messages, or if we don't know how to get a hold of each other, then you can use Discord to have conversations or follow a topic, add information to a topic. And then you can do things called threading, where it's like if somebody adds a topic, you can have sub conversation that's organized underneath that topic. So I've been using it kind of for myself in the last week or two to just keep track of the meetings, the events, a lot of information and resources that I gather from these meetings. And yeah, so anyone can feel free to join it. I think it'd be best if we kind of keep it to members, so then we don't just have general public unless they feel like joining the membership. And so yeah, I posted it in the chat, and then I saw a couple pop-ups there for saying, did you post anything there for the link to the chat? Or
No, I'll just I'll put that in the members only area on the website, I think, and just leave it there. So it's going to be fairly well hidden, so we'll have to promote it to our members directly.
Yeah, and then there's no pressure. You don't have to join if that's not your form of communication, but it does help when it comes to certain things, like just trying to get, like if you're missing the meeting and you're trying to join the meeting versus sending a bunch of emails and having communication of emails back and forth, it just kind of stays in a direct message or a inside of the Discord. So if anybody wants me to show, I could do a screen share if you want to see it quickly.
Sure.
Okay.
So Darren, I should have used that earlier when I was trying to get a hold of Reg.
Yeah, if everyone was on it. Yeah, and Reg is on it. So where do I have it here? Here we go. Okay, so there's a general channel. That's where you can see like a lot of people are starting to join, and they pop up in there. But if you have any just general questions or inquiries or anything like that, you would just post it here, type it in. I've been starting to put like the meetings here. You could still get it in email, but for me, having to like dig through emails and look through to find the link. Sometimes I can't do that, or it's just hard to find. So this way I just go to Discord, find the channel, click the link, open it. Events, I've started to put some of the events in here. There's probably a better way to make it a little more clear, but you know, some things might be useful, some things may not. Sky News, I put the PDF, Explore the Universe. I found some links to like really good videos from I think the national website that were explaining a lot of the stuff. So I just started putting that in. You know, if you're following along with this, you can go to it and you could say create a thread and you could talk about this specific post or particular post. Same with Explore the Moon. I put some, you know, online resources. I found an interesting site where you could actually rent telescope time on these telescopes in Chile and Spain and Australia. And so I posted a link there. Thought that was interesting. And they're pretty big telescopes, so you can get, you know, an hour or 2 hours and acquire the data, which was pretty neat. Books, this is just another channel. I thought if anybody knows any interesting books, they could go ahead and post it in there and talk about it, give your review if you wanted. Solar Eclipse channel and observing locations, that was something we were talking about in the getting started. Like what's all your favorite, you know, you don't have to give it up, but if you know, have some good locations. And then these ones here are private channels because those are the ones that if you want to be invited to like more communication, it's like the astrophotography and the getting started. And so in here you could we would post more relevant information to that. And then for Dave and Brock and all the other guys who are in the astrophotography, usually you guys do an email, but in here if you were to post it, you could do the sub threads and everybody could talk about the picture there. So it's just a chat room.
Sounds like we should give it a try.
And Darren, I might be able to put in some Eclipse stuff in there.
Yeah, so feel free to add whatever you want. And if there's anything that just seems like it, like, you know, if you want to make a channel, I think I could make channels if it makes sense, which are basically just like categorized chat rooms is what a channel would be. So yeah, that's all I have.
Thanks, Darren. Anybody else have anything they want to speak about or just...
Brock, could I speak for a minute and I'm in the room here?
Certainly, Reg.
I guess three things. One is a reminder. Hello, everyone. One is a reminder that on Wednesday night, we're going to have a talk at UVic, room A104. And Leo is going to be giving a talk about his analysis of the first deep sky image from the James Webb Space Telescope. And this is some kind of breakthrough type of thing, and it'll be really exciting. So I hope you can join us there. Secondly, there was a mention about Barnard's Loop, and in 2014 at our GA, Anthony Pons was our Northcott lecturer, and he gave his talk on a thing called the Orion Eridanus superbubble, and that includes the Barnard Loop and a whole pile of other stuff. And this bubble is not entirely visible, but it has an angle of 45 degrees by 20 degrees, and it's moving towards us at, I believe, 9 million kilometers a day. So it'll be here by September. At any rate, this is kind of an interesting thing, and there's an article on it on the April 2017 Sky News that is available on the site. The other thing is that we were talking about women in space, and one thing that Barbara Lane did on Women's Day, we had a special thing on Women's Day before the pandemic. Barb's background, she was an epidemiologist and she had a dry wit. And she did a mortality analysis of astronauts in space and proved that it was a much more dangerous venture for women than men. So she always left us laughing, and we'll miss her. That's it.
Thanks, Reg. Anyone else? I don't see David Lee. It looks like he's not here today, but no other SIG news, I guess. Okay. Well, if that's all we have, we can wrap it up.
We have hosts for the rest of March. We do need technical support. So if anybody would like to get trained on the setting up the computer, that would be very appreciated if we could increase our volunteer base for here in the room. And we always would like to have other people who would be willing to host. It is not an onerous job.
No, it's not. Lauri, do you have something to add?
Yeah, sorry, I was just thinking just to put out another call for anybody who's interested in helping with the astronomy day down at the museum or in the evening up at the center of the universe. We'll be having a full time on May the 18th, the Saturday, May the 18th. And we do have different people who are in charge of different groups of different things that are happening. And you will be getting called if your name is on the volunteer list. I think Marjie, you've sent out the call for adding your name into the volunteer list if it's not already there, and you'll be getting calls from different people to say, hi, would you like to help for for part of the day? I mean, nobody's asking you to do the entire thing. It's just like if everybody did a couple of hours, it would go pretty smoothly. So that would be that. And then the last thing for me is I still have a few solar glasses left. And so if anybody still needs any because you are going away and are going to go and see them and you would like to have a few to take with you, please let me know, either by email and then or through Discord. I will put myself on Discord and we'll do that. And you can let me know and I can make sure that I can get them to you before you go.
Marjie, are people writing in? Was your call successful?
I've had 3.
But I bet there's some more of you who have every intention of being part of this big community event because it's so fun, but you haven't actually written, Marjie. But you could now, and it would be appreciated.
Okay. Well, thanks everybody.
We'll see you on Thursday. Wednesday night
yeah.
at the center. Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.